Well, to Donald Mackerel Game with me, Donald Mackerel. Got an interesting video for you today. I've actually got a bit of a request. I've had a request off Tony Fighter 2 where he says, what are my favourite basketball games of all time? Because everybody knows I'm a bit of a basketball nut. Got here today a mix of my two favourite things. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves, which aren't my favourite team, but I just love basketball. But it's the Prince-inspired top that they had not so long ago, the Derrick Rose edition, when he had that one season for him. So yeah, really, really love this top. But I'm going to talk about my 5 favourite simulation basketball games. We're not talking about arcade games here. We're talking about simulation style games. So if you don't know the difference, simulation is more realistic. Arcade is more for fun. So WWE 2K series versus the recent AEW game, or the old WWE games that used to be fun. Remember them? So we're going to do my 5 favourite simulation basketball games. And here comes number 5. Yeah, so number 5 was Total NBA 97 on the PS1. I remember back at the time, my friend Stephen Mitchell lived up in Scotland, lived in a little place called Peterhead, and he had a PS1, and I live still down in Shropshire. I had the Sega Saturn, and he was telling me about this amazing game called Total NBA on the PS1, so I was sort of bragging to him, going, yeah, I've got better games on the Saturn. Turns out, well, I don't know, I suppose I did, but the Total NBA games were a better franchise than what was available on the Saturn at the time. We also argued over who was the better player. I thought Latrell Sprewell was better than his choice, which was Steve Kerr. The argument's still up on that one. I don't know, I'm guessing the people watching this video have never even heard of Latrell Sprewell. You might have heard of Steve Kerr because of the Golden State Warriors and obviously the Chicago Bulls. But yeah, he said that I should try Total NBA. So when I got my PS1, I went out and I got a copy of Total NBA 97, which was iconic as well, because it came in like a cardboard box and it had like a rubber front to it that felt like a basketball. It was so cool. Now I've not been able to pick one up. I can only see like the standard jewel case edition, so I don't want that. I am still looking for the cardboard case rubber front one, although I think they fetch a pretty penny nowadays. But yeah, great game, great game. Not the best game, obviously, which is why it's coming at number 5, but still really, really good game. Really enjoyed it, really fun. It did have that awkward thing where you had roster guard instead of Michael Jordan and roster forward instead of Charles Barkley. It do that sort of stuff. So it still had all the official teams and all the other players were official as well, you know, that they were all genuine. But there's those 2 players, I think they had some sort of clause in the contracts where nobody could use their names and likenesses or something like that. But yeah, really fun little game. But as you'll find out, nah, it wasn't better than my game on the Sega Saturn. So straight in with a curveball at number 4. It is a simulation game. You might not think it is from the title, but it's Jordan versus Bird on the Mega Drive or Sega Genesis, depending on where you're from. So it is a one-on-one sort of game. It's just you playing as either Michael Jordan or Larry Bird. Apparently Larry was meant to be better at threes in the game and Jordan was meant to be better at like dunks. I didn't really notice much of a difference. No matter who I played as, it was pretty much if you could play the game well, you were going to win. So yeah, I'd always play that with my friends. I remember my mate Chris Rouse. I remember being a little kid and we'd spend forever trying to get 10s on the dunk competition. The 3-point competition was really, really easy, and I was convinced that there was a game of horse included in it. But I think we just did that ourselves. I think we just made our own game of horse while we were playing the one-on-one simulator. But yeah, clunky by today's standards, really, really awkward. But I think it's something that, if done well, could make a welcome comeback. And it was just so different to anything else at the time. Yeah, Jordan versus Bird. I think it had like one super one-on-one or something like that. I think it was a subtitle. But what a game, what a great game. And if you've got a Mega Drive, you can still find it cheap. And it's still fun to play on, especially the dunk competition. So, Donald, for number 3, what was the game on the Sega Saturn that was better than Total NBA? It was NBA Action, actually. I think there was NBA Action And I seem to remember NBA Action 98 as well. I'm sure there was 97 too. But NBA Action was the one that obviously first sucked me in. I was still a kid. I was still in that Chicago Bulls hype that was going around in the 90s. And what a fantastic game. It had lots and lots of glitches. I do remember that if you pressed shoot at exactly the same time that you caught a rebound, when your character hit the floor, they'd fly from one end of the court to the other and instantly dunk it. And it didn't matter what height they were, if they were meant to be any good at dunks, that would just be their initial reaction, was just collect the ball, land on the floor, dunk on the other end of the court. Fantastic game. But it was really, really cool. One of the first games as well that had like an editor that I remember, and again, before this, you'll find in one of my future picks that, yeah, games did have editors, but this one was really in depth. I could make like all my school friends and like people on my local basketball team, that sort of stuff. So no, really, really cool. Really, really enjoyed it. NBA Action on the Sega Saturn. And great controls as well. Bloody, the Sega Saturn is such an unsung computer, and I still, to this day, say that it was better than the PlayStation. Anyway, NBA Action at number 3. So we're still going retro with number 2. Trust me, you're not going to get many new games on this list. Number 2 is NBA Live 96, again on the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. So I'm sorry if I've cut any consoles or anything like this. This is just my experiences. This is my youth. These are my favourite games that bring back the best memories from me. So NBA Live 96, number 1, create your own players. Number 2, create your own teams. You could put goggles on players, you could put headbands on them. There was so much, you could give them giant green afros if you wanted to, but it was such a great game. You had like a franchise mode on there. This is back on like the Sega Mega Drive, just remember that. I think it was on the SNES as well, although if I remember right, the gameplay was slightly different, but pretty much the same game. But yeah, what a game. Absolutely fantastic game. It was probably the first series that introduced me to how good basketball could be. And obviously I followed the NBA Live series past that, way into like the PS1 era, all the way up to like the Xbox 360 era. I'm not sure, did they do anything for the PS4 or Xbox One? I don't think so. I think it got to NBA Live 10, I think, with Luol Deng on the front cover, I want to say. And then it went to something called NBA Elite that just bombed. It was just like what do you call it? T-stance, I think it's called, where the game characters are all glitching out, and yeah, it was just. I never played it, but I heard it was such a bad game. I think I downloaded a free demo of it. Yeah, and it's such a shame that the NBA Live series went from that amazing peak all the way down into obscurity, and now it doesn't even blummin' exist. So yeah, what a shame. But those early NBA Live games, especially NBA Live 96, absolutely fantastic, isometric fun. Basically, it's simulation and also slightly arcadey at the same time, so it caters for both people. If you get the chance, do go and pick it up, do go and play it. It's brilliant.
The shot, no good, and it's the Cavaliers taking it the other way. West scores the opening field goal.
So my favorite game of all time, it's got to be NBA Live 2K10. Anybody who's watched the channel before has seen me call it out multiple times as being the best basketball game of all time. Number 1, it's got Kobe Bryant being iconic on the front cover. Number 2, the soundtrack. I think you had people like Flow Rider, you had people like Beanie Man, you had people like MGMT, I think they were called. Just the soundtrack in its entirety was fantastic. It was one of those, like people who like the FIFA franchise, it was one of those iconic years where every single track on the soundtrack was just quality. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And the gameplay as well. I remember, the leap to that generation, your PS3, your Xbox 360. I remember NBA 2K7 being a good game. It was the first time I saw players with actual sweat coming down their heads as they played, so you knew that you had to sub them off. Really, really good in that sense. But it sort of stagnated. It went 7, 8, 9, nothing really happened. Then 2K10 came around. And oh my God, I can't put into words the difference between 2K9 and 2K10, why it is such a fantastic game. That leap that then sort of stayed around on 11 and 12, and I would say 13 as well, although that's when they brought in microtransactions and they lost me as a gamer. I think the games nowadays are more focused on the arcade style of it. Like, yeah, there's the simulation option available, but they're more focused on the online element. Again, the quick cash grabs from gullible idiots that want to play the games and pay real life money to get better at them. I preferred these where, yeah, you had to grind a little bit, but the grinding was fun. It was almost like an RPG in that you put the hours in, you get rewarded, your character gets better, and that's your create a character, by the way. But there was like a season mode. Again, create your own players, create your own teams. Everything about it was 100% my favourite game of all time. And again, I urge anybody, you can pick it up for like £1. Go and get not NBA Live, blimey neck. Go and get NBA 2K10 if you get the chance, and if you see it somewhere. It's like £1. It's, yeah, what are you going to miss out on? But before we call this list finished, I have a couple of notable things I want to talk about. So number one is probably one of the weirdest games I've ever played. Again, back in my youth, I was the Sega Saturn boy. I had a game, I think it was called Slam and Jam, with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the Sega Saturn. It was an odd one. You didn't have like licensed teams. You'd have like Chicago versus Orlando. None of the players were real, apart from obviously Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But you had like weird outliers. Like I remember there was like a 5 foot tall French point guard that could still dunk. It was just an awkward, weird game that was kind of fun, but kind of oh my god, honestly, it was one of the ones where I bought it dirt cheap at a market in Crewe, if I remember rightly, while I was in college. And I remember just taking it home and thinking like, wow, Magic Johnson. Then just going like, oh my god, you really will put your name to anything. But the more you played it, the more you got used to the way it controlled, and it sort of became slightly fun. It almost seemed like a Sega Mega Drive game that had been dumped onto the Sega Saturn. But yeah, odd game. Again, if you see it cheap enough, maybe give it a chance. But to me, it's in the obscurities. But what's the worst game I've ever played?
Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. What you gonna get? Gonna get respect. What you gotta get? Gotta get respect. What you wanna get? Wanna get respect. So how do you earn respect?
Now, for this, I'm going to have to break my boundaries a little bit. Like, again, Slam and Jam might be one of the worst simulation games I've played, even though it is still quite fun. This game, it's not a simulation, but I've had to mention it because there is absolutely nothing fun about this game. It's probably one of the worst games of all time, from my point of view anyway. I just remember getting it as a kid, being so hyped up to play it, and then finding out it was one of, just the worst games of all time. It's called Slam City. It features Scottie Pippen. It's back when people were doing those FMV games on the Mega CD and all that sort of business. And that's what it was. It was like literally, I can't remember, but I don't remember seeing any like cues, like, oh, press left now, press right now, press A now, press up now, anything like that. And I remember none of that. I just remember sitting there with my character. It's almost like White Men Can't Jump. It was of that era. Like even the graphics, the wording, the way it was styled was exactly the same as White Men Can't Jump. I don't know if Scottie Pippen was in the game or not, because I struggled to beat the first guy in the one-on-one, and the second one was impossible for me. But it was just like literally pressing buttons at random moments. Then it had flicked to a different video image where you'd either go up for a layup or go up for a dunk, or you'd steal or you'd block somebody. And yeah, it just didn't make any sense. It was absolutely bloody terrible. I don't know what the official review of it is. I will try and ding up some scores somewhere, probably be on the screen at this moment. I might be completely wrong. People might have loved it back in the day and it might have just been me. But to me, the worst basketball game of all time is Slam City, featuring Scottie Pippen. Yet another money hawk, a guy who'll do absolutely anything as long as it puts like 50 pence in his back pocket. Anyway, that's been my list. It's got my top 5 in it. Obviously, games that come out now are more accessible, easier to play, but for a true basketball fan who wants that simulation experience, especially one who's probably an old boy like me and remembers the heydays of the 90s and even the 2000s to an extent, please do try the games on the list. Please only pick up Slam and Jam if you see it dirt cheap somewhere, and if you see a copy of Slam City, just break it or set fire to it or something. It really isn't worth saving. Anyway, that's been my list. It's been Donald Mackerel. I'll see you all again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers.